section. We're going to be looking at human beings as a species and how this can help us understand postmodernism and the three blessings framework, which somehow we've been talking about, because the principle encourage us to think about living such a lifestyle. Yeah. So when we look at Mother Nature, she's given us a range of strategies to possibly live by, species norms. So there are about 8 of them, which, different species choose. So bears have chosen the single mother species norm, and the seahorses have the single father where they take care of the babies. We have the elephants with the matriarchal extended families. We have bees, which kind of are like matriarchal hives. We have this one male, several female structure, harem, lions. We have lay loads of eggs and hope a few survive, fish and coral and turtles. We have this alpha pair marry, and others are non-marrying servants. So we have wolves, wild.
Stephen. Sorry, what does that mean? Alpha pair marry.
Well, it means that there's a top couple who form the family.
Male and female, yeah?
Yeah, male and female.
All right.
Yeah. And then the others are non-marrying servants or supporters of the family. So we have wolves, where basically the top couple marry and the rest of the wolves stay single. Or this, what's it called? This prairie dog. And there's also this little animal, which, oh gosh, they did this series on. But they're basically just the top couple allowed to have children, basically. And then we have this pair bond for a season, which most birds kind of follow. And then we have pair bond for life, the swans, albatross, beavers, who meet up. So, and but each is a successful strategy. Each leads to the well-being of that species, the psychology of they've chosen it maybe because of the environmental factors. Like you might say, the wolves have chosen the pack norm because they only go after big animals and they need to bring them down, for example. But it leads to a successful strategy, but each species chooses only one strategy, and that sets up the psychology, and the animals almost from birth somehow catch this. This is the norm. So the male elephants will walk away at a certain age and wander around until it's pregnancy time, fertilization time. So, but each one chooses one. So the question that human beings have is, do human beings have a natural species norm? Are we really a species or not a species? Do we have an optimal norm that leads to consistent well-being for our communities? Now, all religions share that human beings fell, somewhere lost their way, and became separated from their natural state. What might that mean when it comes to species norms? Are these scriptures saying that humans lost their natural species norm, and we now live confused lives that consistently lead to the rise and fall of nations? So is this what the fall of man is? We lost our species norm. Now that's a question we can review as we go through it. Now, throughout human history, we typically have 3 political structures that have sustained nations. We have authoritarian with a monogamous family norm, or we have authoritarian with polygamous family norm. And very rarely do we get the systemic energy to create a democracy, but they can only be formed with a monogamous family norm, because democracy is equal rights, which means men and women need to be equal, I might say, and that can only happen with a monogamous setting. So all lasted, but all these possible structures lasted because they had a marital norm, and that protected and nurtured children. So that was even, within polygamy, you still know both your biological parents, hopefully. And so the child could be protected, and that sustained the nation. So if we compare this authoritarian with a monogamous family norm, we can say this is somewhat paralleling the species norm of the wolves. This is the wolf with the alpha pair, and they are, they marry, the alpha couple marries, and they keep the beta wolves in place through a mixture of kindness and fear within a wolf pack. The beta wolves struggle to form their own families, and the betas are there to support the alpha family. And they're territorial in nature. When you wolves are territorial, and all the different ones that species that take on this norm are territorial. So when you apply this to a human community, what does it look like? Authoritarian wolfism is a political system set up so that the betas serve the families of the alphas. So maybe we have slaves, maybe we have high taxation, maybe we have enforced conscription, maybe we have lots of servants for the wealthy families, and the rest, so basically the system is set up so that the alpha families reap the benefits of the energy of society, and they keep it in place through kind of fear. Now, of course, this can benefit the individual because communities can work together to protect themselves from the aggression of other wolf packs or other authoritarian states that are next door, and so that benefits them. But it might not allow them to build a family or build a career or something like this. So we've seen different forms of authoritarian wolfism. The main one we typically see is royal wolfism, which is like a feudalism kind of, which took over Britain, England for several hundred years. So we have the king and queen is seen to be chosen by God. They're the lords and ladies and duchesses and things like this, and they have castles, and then they have serfs who technically are almost like they're like slaves. And if the king asks to send some people for an army, the lord will choose some people and say you have to go off to the army, and they all pay money or food to the lord, and they might just survive in this system, but they support the wealthy families. We have oligarchy wolfism, where we just have very powerful people, rich wealthy individuals ruling a nation, and they control it basically. And so you might say this is like China today, where you have like 7 or 8 very wealthy families which control much of the Politburo, and don't really care what's happening at the bottom of society. So, and then we had Marxist wolfism, which is of the USSR, which was basically ended up, although it says we care about the poor, it's about the poor, but once you get the power in your hands and you have complete control, and you feel, well, I'm the good person caring about the poor, so I should get benefits. So Moscow leaders had their ballets and special shops for them to go to.
Just a quick thing here. Sorry, before you go on. Oligarch wolfism in China, I'm not sure. I think that's more of a party wolfism, the CCP. I don't think Xi Jinping has I don't think he and the higher echelons could be described as oligarchs, independently.
Well, out of the 1,000 people in the CCP, you have to get to number 58 or 60 before you get to the wealthiest American senator. In other words, the top people of the CCCP are extremely wealthy individuals. They run the army, and then they run they run the companies that supply the army, and then they own the construction industries, and they are allowed to borrow huge sums of money and build and sell. And you have these very wealthy individuals in the CCCP who basically control the country, and the flow of public money is definitely in their direction. So
Okay,
they,
because I guess I was thinking about post-Soviet Russia being in the grip of oligarchs.
well, Russia now today is again. It's
Yeah.
slipped from Marxist wolfism, where you had the Brezhnev and all these people with and all the top leaders, very nice. They had their special cars. They had the opera. They had the ballet. Their special shops they could spend dollars in. And there was this, the serfs underneath, the poor working man who slogged away in factories. So it turned into a form of wolfism, where the poor support the wealthier lifestyle. So that makes sense?
Okay, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
hold you up.
Okay. So when you have an authoritarian wolfism of any form, there are no inherent equal rights. There's nothing there there's a base for equal rights within the wolf pack norm. Sometimes you have a thoughtful leader of the wolf pack, and sometimes you have a cruel one who abuses their power. And they typically hold their power in place through fear, often very few rules to stop them, from abusing their power if they so choose it. Some do place themselves under certain laws and restrictions and for the benefit of their community, and often that really helps. And there's a high likelihood that because they're channeling wolfism, that the alphas will go to war or try to expand their territory and wealth. So we saw the desire of the Communist Party, the wealthy leaders there wanted to expand their power base around the world. Obviously, eventually gain more money. We had the era of colonization, which took place when England was wasn't really a real democracy. It was still a wolfish societies. And China today has territorial and expansionist. You feel it. Everybody kind of feels it. When we come to economic Marxism, the economic wolfism, it always leads to political wolfism. It always leads to this top-down structure where the topper, demand wealth and from the poorer people. So, in demanding that economic resources be forcibly shared around, the economic structure parallels the Wolfpack norm. The Wolfpack norm is we share food around, which looks very caring, but food must always go to the alpha families, and they make sure that they do better than everybody else. So we had this saying in Animal Farm, some animals are more equal than others. That's what happens. Out of all the different forms of wolfism, Marxism seems to be the most brutal. It seems to consistently want to kill off large numbers of the population, happening in Russia, China, Laos, and things like that. And the reason for this is because of the storyline that the Marxist leaders tell to get to power, is that if you don't agree with us, our optimal economic norm parallels that of the Wolfpack norm, you are uncaring towards the poor. You are subhuman, and therefore we can kill you off. That kind of mentality that we can destroy you because you're uncaring, because we're the caring ones. We're technically the caring ones for the poor, but it's just hot words coming out of mouth. So we can see the impulse to spread communism around the world. This is 1980s, and you got Russia and China and various allied nations in Africa and you had Costa Rica and Laos, and so it was expanding. And there was kind of like a desire to make this norm, authoritarian norm, where there's very poor people and some very rich people, based upon this ideology. And postmodernism, because it's based in Marxism, Marxist thought systems, does exactly the same. It seeks to create a top-down structure. So the various cartels that are using the Marxist marketing strategy to make money and gain power all create massive social damage, especially amongst the poor. And when you get people on the poor level struggling to build families and struggling to go forward in their lives and build a constructive life, then you automatically you end up with a top layer of basically using the bottom layer for their own end, and that's the way it goes. So the second structure, which has appeared through history quite a few times, many times, is authoritarian Lionism. So, if you look at the lion structure, polygamy is allowed. So the alpha males marry more than one wife. In the Lionism, in lions, consistent power struggles take place. There's a large number of the beta lions don't marry male lions. They're territorial as well. And there's no inherent equality of the sexes. So the females have to submit to the male, the toughest male around, and sometimes he's kind and sometimes he's not very, he's not very thoughtful. He doesn't hunt. He's just lazy. So they have to kind of submit to it. So when lionism comes into communities, when there's some kind of storyline allows men to marry more than one wife, we have alpha males with more than one wife. We see a lot of power struggles between the children of the wives trying to take off. We see a lot of violence there, and also tribal factions form between different lions. Different power factions form, and then again the same thing we've seen in history of polygamous societies. Large numbers of beaters don't marry, often slavery, enforced conscription, exactly the same as we saw in authoritarian wolfism. Again, because the lions are territorial, we see often quite a few ongoing struggles between lion-based societies, you might say. There's no inherent equal rights, again, within lionism, especially when it comes to the inequality of the sexes. Islam, for example, in Islam, there's no equal rights of inheritance for women, divorce rights, infidelity rights. She will be the one accused, not the males. Also child brides and things like this. So this lack of equal rights makes it hard to build stable democracies. So it's hard amongst the different Islamic states to build something that seems like a democracy and is stable. There's always a wobbling around, complicated. So the third species norm that humans have lived under is this lasting love species norm. It's the lasting love species norm, and that's the foundation for a democracy. So about 35 species practice lifelong monogamy. The puffins and doves and gibbons, they marry and they form lifelong bonds. And amongst the species, there's no such thing as an alpha or a beta beating up. The alphas are not going around fighting the betas for women. They are trying to find compatible pair bonding, and there's no such thing as an alpha albatross and a beta albatross. And almost all marry, form a pair bond, and they're not territorial in general in terms of going off aggressively seeking out other territories. That what the area I've got is good enough. So my home, my nest, is my castle. no aggressive, larger territorial aspirations. So I have my nest, and that, as long as I got my nest, I'm happy. Or I've got my beaver den or something, I'm good. And so there's no inherent power struggles amongst these different species. There's inherent equality of the sexes between males and females because they're trying to both take responsibility to raise the kids. And of course, almost all the in the species have competence needed to create a family and home. So that's good. All the lasting love species thrive by living a three blessings lifestyle, what we call, the divine principle talks about three blessings, and they all do that. That's how they survive and thrive as a species. They strive to become a competent young puffin. I will seek out a mate, pair bond, and nurture to protect and nurture our offspring, and we look after the economics, individually look after our economic needs. We're capable enough. And so each of the puffins have an equal responsibility to live to this standard in order to maintain the well-being of their species. If they start to run away from this pattern, then their species would weaken. But they all sense this is my responsibility, and I'm going to live up to that responsibility. And so everybody has an equal right to live this lifestyle. They're all equal rights. We talked about under equal rights. So this is a place of happiness and meaning for a puffin. This is where it is. I just want to become good at being a young puffin, and I want to find meaning in establishing a family and having some close bond with one other puffin, and I'm going to fish and take care of my family and take care of the creation and my island, whatever it is, and I hope my children are a little bit better than me, and that way they will survive. So this is how it kind of like looks in all the true love species, or the lasting love species. They all kind of follow the same pattern. This is their source of joy and happiness. So we have this, this island of puffins here, and they're all doing their job, fulfilling their responsibility, all living a three blessings lifestyle, all have equal rights. There's no alphas, and that's the basis of democracy. It's the fundamental basis of how democracies are formed. Can people fulfill their responsibility and strive to follow, seek out a three blessings lifestyle? That's how democracies can be. It's the only way democracies can be formed, because you have sovereignty. You have citizens are a sovereign citizen. When we talk about being a sovereign citizen, it means you're equally responsible for the health of the nation. And if we talk about sovereign, think about the Queen or King, and we ask ourselves, we don't like it when they mess around sexually. We don't like it when they're corrupt. We don't like it when they divorce. We don't like it when they're meant to be the models that we're following. They're meant to set up a standard for the rest of us, and we don't like it when our king and queen. So it's the same when we understand we're sovereign citizens. We can hurt our community by misbehaving in any of these areas. And therefore it's very hard to set up a democracy. It's very hard to get enough people to say, I'm going to live this three blessings lifestyle, and I'm willing to do that. And the alphas, of course, don't like to give up their power if they were, if you come from a sovereign, royal wolfism, and they don't like it. And so it's hard to get a mindset where people are willing. But that's the kind of mindset that England had and America had when they established their democracies. That it's the individuals taking responsibility to live a three blessings lifestyle, to live with this lasting love norm. So does that make sense so far? Any questions? Is that kind of, am I being clear, or how's it going?
Well, it begs the question, why did God create wolves, lions with none monogamous proclivities, let's say.
Wolves. Sorry.
Why did yes? So you have this. Uh, 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 you're drawing on the species. Let me just try and put my words clearly. You're drawing on the example of wolves and lions um, living uh, a, a a non-democratic lifestyle, let's say.
Yeah.
And then you're drawing on the puffins and the doves living another lifestyle that would appear to be the preferred norm for humans to live.
Yes.
So why did God create those kind of animals in the first place? The ones that are non-norm.
Well, I think environmental factors are very important. You're very, I want to say they lead to a certain ability. You can't have loads and loads of baby wolves, for example, in the middle of Alaska, or there's just not enough food to do that, or to take down big animals. You need a collective. Um, there's just environmental factors lead to, turtles. They've got eggs. They bury them. They can't look after them. They have thousands and they walk away. Various species. I mean, for our joy and happiness, for the diversity of watching. I don't know why God created all the different species. No, but
So
evidently,
would environmental factors have caused Muslims to allow for polygamy, have child brides or whatever? Was there some factor in their own in the
well,
environment they were living in the Middle East that was conducive to that way of thinking beyond the religion itself?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess so. I mean, when you're highly territorial and you end up with loads of wars, you end up with loads of single women, yeah, who have
Yes, yeah.
children, and even within Judaism, they used to allow you to marry your brother's wife if the brother died. They used to allow for polygamy up to about 1,000 years ago. So evidently, there's we see this within Indian tribes, for example, in North America, that they're taking care of the bride of the dead, dead
Can I
brother
ask,
or something.
can I ask a question there, Steve?
Yeah.
What do you know, let us say, about the monogamistic animal realms like the puffins and the beavers? What happens there when the beaver parents die? Who takes care of the kids who be left?
Well, they would if they were the babies are young, then they would die. Yeah.
Yes, you see, there's the answer why in some situations polygamy was useful. For example, as you mentioned, in Muslim societies, when, for example, the husband died for whatever reason,
Yes.
sometimes they could only support themselves through prostitution and all sorts of things.
Yes.
So that is why that things happen. That happens in Judaism. That happens all over the world, also in Christian things.
I mean, you look at, but you
that
look
is
at
why
your.
I asked the question: how was that regulated when the beaver parents died? What happened to the kids when they're growing, or the puffin's parent died? Who took responsibility? At least in this other type of society, there was some kind of responsibility.
Well,
Sometimes it was the brother, no?
humans obviously have extended families, so typically they went to live with an aunt or grandparents or whatever. Yeah, we are more than just puffins centered. We understand the value of having extended families, friends, and things like this. But there's still the core is the lasting love norm our species optimal species norm? That's the question. Yeah, or is it royal wolfism, or is it, because the Marxists will say it's some kind of wolfism with the top-down caring leaders, but the caring leaders just become abusive with all their power. That's just the way it ends, and the most abusive people can get rid of the caring people, and ends up with the very abusive leaders. That's what we've seen. So
yeah, you're right. In an more ideal society or an African, they have more tribal environment. But let us say in a more ideal society, if there is good families and there is some parents have problems, you look after, your nephews and your nieces, and
yeah,
you become an uncle and auntie. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So anyway, so if you're a puffin, you've got a first blessing. You've got to grow up to be a reasonable puffin. So there's some kind of core values which puffins follow. Don't kill your neighbor, don't steal from your neighbor, don't commit infidelity is another one. They don't typically do. They learn these values, and they have a self-initiated development attitude. They don't. It may be cold, it may be wet, doesn't matter. They know they have to keep trying to grow. They prepare for family life, prepare to learn to catch fish. They have parental support, and with all this, they can become reasonable puffins who can sustain their species. And what's interesting is that all the married for life species, the lasting life species, follow the same family building norms. They all follow the same, which is given the term absolute monogamy. They're like good Catholics, you might say. So none of them have sex in courtship. They restrain themselves until they know they have bonded. Until they know they have pair bonded, they don't enter into sexual relationships. None of them do. They have some kind of bonding moment. They value fidelity. Very rarely infidelity. There's very limited amount of divorce. Almost all of them express some kind of ongoing affection. It's hard if you're a lizard to do that, but anyway. And of course, all of this gives the maximum chance of the child being raised with the love and protection of both its biological parents. So this is what we teach our children. It's and we say this is the best for us as a for us human beings as a species, and they are the role model. Father says Adam and Eve should have learned from the animals. Maybe there were some true love animals around, lasting love animals.
Peter, sorry, Stephen, are you've done the research on puffin life?
Yes.
So this is you're drawing these bullet points are backed up by.
Yes, you can look at this. Yeah, you can look at this. There's as I said, there's the occasional. We're not sure why there's an infidelity sometimes. Like a swan, maybe she doesn't. She realizes he's not fertile, or she hasn't been made pregnant, and so she'll go off to somebody else and come back. We occasionally see a puffin being beaten. Puffins fighting over the female. He thinks he's married, and some other guy comes along and steals his wife from him.
But you're not. I mean, this you're saying this is all backed up by research, observational research, because there might be a temptation to project too much into observing puffins and giving them a human characteristic.
Well, I mean, it's
in the way you have described.
Well, I mean, it's very clear that they don't engage in premarital sex. That's very clear. Observationally, it's extremely clear. And there's a commitment moment because once they've made it, they come back year after year to the same partner, and we see ongoing affection.
These birds are tagged. There's a tagging going on to make sure they're the very same birds.
Yes.
that come back each year to the same nest or whatever.
Come back. Yes. 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 That's right. Yeah. That's right. That's what we see. Yeah. Oh, you can go on, lasting love species on Google, and they'll pop up all these, all these different species. And they all have their way of saying hello when they come back together, and they're all, so happy to see their partners again, and it's very beautiful.
Yeah, it's just that okay. I just want to
Oh, please.
emphasize, preempt, let's say, a more cynical observer of this lecture to come back to you and say, are you projecting too much of the animal kingdom into the human, interactions we have as humans, the norms of behavior?
Well, this is what the Catholics have, that's what, up until 50 years ago, this is what we were trying to teach our children to some extent. The laws tried to support a lot of this. It was, and we, what can I say? I've looked at these different species. When you type in lasting love, and you have these videos of them coming back and meeting, and then you see very rare, infidelity and things like this. And I've done quite a lot of research on it, and it's not that, as I said, there's value fidelity and then a limited amount of separation, but in general, they're very strong. These bonds are very strong.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess I can only go by something like a David Attenborough nature program, and occasionally he does bring in a human factor, that a comparison, a parallel with human, how humans, male females would behave. So I get that point. I just wondered about the extent that you're still talking about value, fidelity, ongoing affection, whatever, no divorce. I mean, yeah, I'm going with it. That's fine. I understand. It's just about the projection issue. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I catch you. How much can you back this up? Yeah, but it's you can go off and, I mean, I could present studies and whatever,
Yeah.
But,
okay. No, that's fine. I take your word.
Right, but the point is, the human child takes so long to grow up. Yeah, that's the point. And to have any other, that's why all the different species norms, all the ones we follow, the authoritarian ones and this more democratic one where each family takes personal responsibility and given the freedom to take responsibility. They all need a marital norm to protect the child, and infidelity doesn't protect the child, or it just, divorce doesn't protect the child, or premarital sex doesn't protect the child, and they all crumble, the societies that go that way. So yeah, and so when we look at the kind of affection they show each other, the Arctic terns bring gifts, the cranes dance, there's a lot of massaging and touch, there's the albatrosses welcome each other home with a lot of happiness and joy. A lot of them do everything together. There's a lot of comforting, and these kind of things we recognize as affection in human beings. One factor that kind of suggests that our optimal species norm is that of the lasting love is the fact that we do have this couple affection with expression of a couple bonding, emotional bonding with the expression of affection. Because if we didn't need it, if we didn't need to stay together, if our children didn't need us together, if we could just be single parent species, for example, then we would not develop that emotional bonding. Just like, crocodiles, or polar bears. There's no necessity for the male and female to develop methods of affection that they recognize and an emotional connection. It's only the fact that we do that is shows that we are built, to be a lasting love species of some form. Yeah. So J.D. Unwin, so when nations have managed to practice absolute monogamy, when the cultural norms of and people have voluntarily chosen to restrict their sexual activity and until marriage and limit the divorce and separation and infidelity and things like that. The cultural norms are aligned with that. So J.D. Unwin studied all these different lots of cultures, civilizations that rose and fell, and he noticed that when a nation can develop the worldview that encourages citizens to freely embrace absolute monogamy, this package of norms of the lasting love, there's tremendous developmental energy is released. And within 3 generations, you see science and you see philosophers and art and cultures and buildings and architecture and everything else. Within 3 generations, you suddenly see, people chatting instead of running after girls and breaking their families and hurting their children, whatever. The culture generates a positive force forward, and the focus of the energy goes into cultural development. And he noticed this was the case in Mesopotamia, in Greece, in the when they had a democracy there of some form. The Romans started with a absolute monogamy norm. The Teutonics started with one as well, with the East European Teutonic, and the British, in the 1600s, 1700s, when we took on a very strong Puritan marital norm, which was liberated a bit, but still it kept the this absolute monogamy mentality, and based upon that, suddenly we saw England grow to becoming, how one say, generate huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of developmental and cultural and energy. And he tried to find out why they all lost their way from their absolute monogamy, and he said, of course, it ended up with the collapse of the marital form, and the primary reason for this is because they all started to engage in premarital sex. So this is the principle, talks about that we lose in a species norm context. We lose our if our optimal species norm is that of the true loves, which do not engage in premarital sex, we lose our species norm when we engage in premarital sex. We lose it. We can't maintain it, and we head in a different direction as a species, and then we take on different species norm, which are suboptimal. And so
you're talking about premarital sex. You're not talking about adultery.
No, I'm talking about premarital in general. Yeah.
To teenagers having sex before marriage.
That's it.
And that can bring down a civilization.
Yeah, that brings down the civilization because that ends up because it ends up harming children. And
yeah. Sorry, premarital sex is sexual relation. You mean teenage children?
Well, young adults, whatever. We have all kinds of people involved in premarital sex today. We're a highly sexualized society with these Tinders and all these things.
Right. So you the absolute standard is that a teenager should abstain from sex until they are ready to be blessed with their lifelong partner. That's what the church unification teaching was always about. So that's a return to that absolute standard.
Because this standard here, which is all the lasting love, species follow. They if once they break this premarital sex thing, they start following a different species norm. They can't maintain the rest of it. The rest of it just gets lost, gets confused.
You see, I was thinking that adultery was the main problem. If a family got broken up because the man, usually it's the man, went with another woman,
Yes.
and then the children of that broken family become harmed, and
Yes.
they become a negative influence growing
That's
up
right.
in society,
Yeah. Yeah.
coming from a so-called broken home.
Yeah.
And usually they're the ones who end up, a lot of times they end up in prison, or, all the
Yes.
statistics bear that out. But
Yes.
that's to do with a broken home. So yeah, just this term premarital sex, some may think of it as teenage sex, but you're talking about people who in their 20s and 30s who still don't commit themselves to one partner, but prefer
Yes.
to have a range of partners.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because that starts off that once you enter into that realm, all kinds of other things happen.
Right.
And part of that is, once I slept, because we see this in the data, we see those people who marry, who have sex before marriage are more likely to commit infidelity. If they've had a range of partners beforehand, they're more likely to divorce. It sets in a pattern of thinking which says, if I don't like you, I can separate. Yeah. And it sets up a kind of like a completely different worldview than I'm saving myself for marriage, and I'm going to find that person, and I'm going to bond, and we're going to really do my best to make this work. Yeah. So it creates a different, and there's lots of different things that happen. But the key thing here is once you enter into, once the species, if this is a lasting love, enter into premarital sex, they automatically take on a different species norm, and that species norm may not include the rest of the package of things. So
And how trusting are you of a late teen couple feeling that they found their lifelong partner?
Well, I mean, of course, in today's world, it's very confusing. I mean, in the past, the average age of marriage was probably around 20, 18, 19, 20. Most people because they didn't live very long. They just, and many people 40, if you're lucky. And so people married young and had babies and quite young, but they often had their community around them and support, and so it was easier for them to survive, even if it wasn't ideal. I mean, the cultural sentence in Europe, Europe was, you should, if you made the girl pregnant, you should do the honorable thing and marry. It was expected that you marry. It was even 50, 60 years ago, that was kind of still the cultural expectation.
Shotgun marriage, you call it.
Yeah, shotgun marriage, yeah. I mean, it's the same in Africa. They did the same thing. If you made the girl pregnant, it was expected you marry. A lot of cultures locked up their girls until their marrying age. If you look at the Babylonians, they locked up their girls, and then they took the market and kind of tried to sell them to the highest. They tried to, I want to say, raise them up to be fine young ladies, and then try to get the best price for them. And all these different methods of trying to make sure that the premarital sex doesn't take place. Because it's so devastating for a community. So he noticed this. He said, once we lose this norm of restraining ourselves before marriage, then the culture is going to be in a downhill direction, because too many children are going to get hurt. So we see this happening here. For example, what happens when a culture becomes hypersexualized, like our culture has become a hypersexual. People don't see the in general don't see the damage caused by living a hypersexualized lifestyle in general. They've lost that. There's no judgment, almost any no judgment left, whereas 70 years ago there was total judgment. So but women and men engage in sexual activity outside of marriage with no intention of pair bonding. They are acting like those species that have the single parent species norm. So if you're just, if you, go down the pub, meet somebody, have sex, and then walk away, that's very much like the single parent species. You're not, the male has no intention of being there to raise it if there were kids. But no flourishing human culture has ever been built upon single parenting. It's just too devastating. Now, what happens when you enter into the world of a culture which says we're basically a single parent species norm? That's we can live with that, and we can enter into sex with anybody with no, intention to be there to raise the children. So in single parent, the courtship patterns change. We see this now in our societies. So when you look at the single parent species, often the males have to fight each other to get the girl, or they get the girls look at the size of the muscles, or they might have to dance like turkeys dance and flirt well, or show off their feathers, sing well. If I sing well, maybe I'll get the girl. They have absolutely no need for partnering skills. They have no need to develop skills to pair bond because it's a thing. And for the males, the number of sexual conquests proves my greatness. That I'm an alpha because I, 6 gay girls.
Steve, can I say something to this?
Yeah.
I read statistic actually that attraction. Well, women have been attracted to a certain kind of type of person. Yeah. This usually being of genes. It's not necessarily a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Even in the male, in the human spaces. In fact, you could see that some female were attracted to certain kind of feature, with a certain kind of presence, with a certain kind of attitude, which was all based on DNA and genes. Yeah. So to overcome that, because sometimes why we say, well, women feel attracted to bad boys, is to say. So it is also that is actually a natural thing that happens. So to overcome that, there have been education and many other education that female recognize that and men recognize that and so on.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we have to recognize we have to help our children recognize a poorly formed alpha versus a well-formed alpha. Yeah, we have to,
I couldn't understand, for example, in my family, why a lot of girls were attracted to my boys. From my viewpoint, they were looking ugly. But that's kind of attributes, kind of things, where the girls, even in the fundraising teams, girls were attracted to them. So which I had to then educate and then be careful what you do. So there's some kind of natural thing going on, which there's always
there's all kinds of things going on. It's true. There's all kinds of things, but we can see today many males, will follow this pattern of trying to get sexual conquests with no intention of being a father. Yeah. And they might flirt well or dance well or build muscles up or whatever. Yeah. And they don't consider their core values. They don't consider, they don't consider their partnering skills, whether they're living a life that is.
What I agree with that, but what they're saying, why women feel attracted to these type of men, because for the survival things, they can give the most healthy genes and attitudes that their children can survive. That is why Genghis Khan, for example, has his DNA from Genghis Khan, for example, is the most spread DNA ever.
Yeah,
And
he was a
a
bad boy,
nice
for
guy,
sure. He was a bad boy, but the women didn't choose him. I mean, I wouldn't say they chose him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point is, you want somebody who's willing to break. Peterson talked about this. He says, you don't want, women are not attracted to men who's not willing to break a few rules. But knowing the difference between a male who's willing to break a few, unimportant rules, and the difference between that and the ones who are willing to break lots of rules is a major. You've got to look for those positive, negative signs.
Yeah, I know it is a problem, but I think that is what also happens sometimes.
Of course it does. It's a very fine thing, and that's why in the past the men would have to go to the father and say, "Am I worthy?" So you would have these gatekeepers, and they were very important. And he would look and say, "Well, you're too much of a bad boy. Get your act together." And this kind of thing, because the maturity of the parents help protect, the girl from her poor choices. And they denied them many times, of course. But in a lasting love species, of course, you're looking for a long-term partner. So, are you a team player? Can you provide for the family? Is there some emotional connection that I feel? Can you restrain your sexuality so that you stay, loyal to me sexually? So this is the lasting love species. So once you enter into a hypersexualized society, more and more boys don't realize they have to develop this side of their character, and they just hope to get the girl by doing these other things on the left, and they might not go off and do community positive things to develop their team player skills, or they might not, get a proper job or things like this. They might just look cool. So in a hypersexualized society, males struggle to develop qualities needed to build a lasting marriage. So part of what happens when you enter into premarital sex society is that the males get confused and the women get confused about what they have to develop to become a good partner and a good marital partner and father and mother. And things just get out of control. You get too confused. And when you come to the third blessing within the lasting love species norm, then it's my job. I have to mature myself. It's my responsibility. It's my job to grow up so I can economically provide for my family. And it follows the norms of a free market society. So people are free to go off and work, and they can keep most of what they catch and use their talents to catch things. And there's a limited amount of predators. The laws protect people. There's a environment, the culture, the infrastructure supports you as you seek to do your job, and ideally you look after the environment for future generations. And this pattern, which is exactly the same as the lasting love norm, is the free market system, and it has in the last 30 years lifted 3 billion people out of poverty line existence. So here we have a species norm which historically has shown us to provide our incredible blessings and helpfulness. And if we can unite with it, it seems like this is our optimal species norm. It seems like, in general, Puffin is the most peaceful of the lasting love species norm, because they're not territorial and they don't have to fight, other males for the sake of getting the females. They are the most peaceful of all the species. I'm happy to enjoy my 3 blessings lifestyle. I'm growing up. I've got a family, and I'm feeding my family, and I'm just happy being there and doing that. And so when you get that ethos within democratic nations, they want the same for other people in other nations. They say, we wish you well. I don't want to go off and take over your country. I just hope you build good families, And so America didn't go off, and which was formed its foundation based upon the lasting love norm and Christian, ethos. Didn't become a world superpower, didn't take over other colonies, didn't go off and conquer, but it spent billions and billions and trillions to try and help other countries form democracies and stabilize the norms of the true loves. And they didn't do much to help with the family systems, but they tried to establish the economic systems or the education system or these other things. So, and it's the most peaceful. And when you think that, 2,000-3,000 years ago, there were hundreds of different religions around the world, but we congregated around 5 or 6 main ones. And all of these main species, you might have been a rock worshiper or a sky worshiper or, worshiper of the Zeus in the sky or whatever. But all these religions focused on all but one focused on building lasting love marriages and family. So how the Bible supports the lasting love, the Confucianism valued single monogamous marriages and how this relationship between husband and wife and children, and the Buddhism and most of Hinduism also is monogamous. And
by the way, Stephen, I keep getting reminded that Confucianism is not a religion.
But yeah, it's a philosophy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as a thought system, it guided people's lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, the only major divergent view that people congregate is Islam, which is polygamous, but still the child knows both its biological parents. So that's okay. That to some extent that's acceptable, except you can't. There's no equal rights there. So now, because you have a peace-loving mentality, because Puffinism, just says, I just leave me alone, let me get on with my own life and build my family and take care of my kids, and it struggles to understand the territorial nature of lions and wolves. It struggles to understand that people want to, come and eat them, basically. And Puffins struggle to understand how their decaying nations attract predators. And Puffins struggle to understand that others wish to harm their families. They don't understand, why would you want to harm my family? They don't catch this point. And so, they sign off pieces of paper. They say, oh, we'll let the Chinese wolf-infused oligarchs join the WTO, World Trade Organization. They will change. They will become, puffin-loving nations if we allow them to. But they haven't changed. They just got more aggressive. Or let many lion-infused Muslim extremists into Europe, and they will change. Our culture would change them, but they haven't changed. You look at Sweden and the drug gangs and the bombings and the stabbings and all kinds of things that have happened within the Muslim community there. It caused a major transformation in Swedish society. And we'll let our postmodernists teach our kids. Why would they seek to harm them? And the postmodernists are happy to harm the children because they want the Marxist state to come about. So we kind of a little bit blind as Puffins. We kind of like just think, I'm happy being who I am, living my own life and getting on with my life. And you should be the same. And why would you? I'm not interested in harming your family structure and your nation. And they kind of like don't understand the violence of other species norms, which are more violent. So in the world of species norms, when you look at the world through this species norms mentality, which species norm is this country following? Which is this culture following? There's no such thing as a division of church and state because just people all over the world are encouraging different species norms. It makes no difference whether this species norm is kind of like, shown, revealed through divine revelation or through humanistic Marxist culture or whatever else, through Mother Nature. It doesn't matter. Everybody's trying to live a species norm or trying to, fit in something here. And it's basically a struggle between different species norms. So we have there's a difference between multicultural versus multi-ethnic society. So a multi-ethnic society with citizens encouraging a similar species norm, like for example, if the Chinese come here or the Indians come here and they have a monogamous, value system, we can rejoice in the different foods we have, and we can realize, that it might enrich our society and help us and even stabilize us, But a nation with different communities who are pushing different species norms will lead to different core values. Like men come here from Islamic nations who have no intention of seeing women as equal rights, for example. And this will lead to a culture war and maybe violence. So a lot of people talk about the potential for civil war in Europe between Islamists and the native citizens. So these kind of, there's a lot of worry building up all across Europe because this is not multi-ethnic, this is multicultural. And culture means a different culture. And we go to war because of cultures that, Hitler had a different culture than democracy, and we didn't like it. So, when you look at the world, you can start to look at it through the eyes of species norms. So you can look at China, which is authoritarian oligarchy wolfism, and wolfism always end up with the top people destroying the ability of the poorer people to build a three-blessing lifestyle. That's what oligarch wolfism is all about. I should benefit and you should, suffer.
Sorry,
and so,
sorry, Steve. Could you explain the orange and the blue lines?
Yes, I just get there. Yeah. So basically, if we look to the last 10 years in China, because as the oligarchy wolfism established itself, then more and more people in the poorer segment are struggling to marry and struggling to have children. So the pink line is the number of children per 1,000 people in China, and the turquoise line is the number of people marrying per 1,000. So it's
per 1,000 people.
Yeah, that's the marital rate per year. Yeah?
So you mean 500 couples, 1,000 people?
No, 4.85 couples per 1,000 people are marrying a year in China.
4.8
you had the same you had the same problems visualizing this the last time we talked about it. Yes, when we talked about the first talk. You have 1,000 people. Out of them, in 1 year, 5 were married. 10 years ago, 10 would have married.
Right. So when you say they didn't, they were common law. They had common law relationships without marrying, or what?
No. I'm just saying. I don't know how many people cohabit in China, and I think cohabitation is not really acceptable still. But I think the ability of people to feel that they have competences to marry and stay married has weakened rapidly over the last 10 years. And the ability of people to say, "Oh, we can afford a child and give it a good future and have a confident future," the number of people who feel confident in that and capable of that has reduced rapidly as well in the last 10 years.
It's the same in the West, of course.
Yeah, it's the same in the West at all, because we have cultural Marxism, which is an authoritarian wolfism too, because that's the purpose of Marxism, is to create a top-down authoritarian where the top rule and benefit. That's the point of Marxism. It's always been the point, though they say we care about the poor or the transgender or whatever. They don't care. They just want the power and the money that comes with saying these words. So in China, as the oligarchy wolfism sets in, more and more people struggle, especially on the lower end of the economic scale, to form families and to have children. And so it ends up with them, single people, basically just going to work to make profits for for the wealthy families. They have sweatshops and all these different things.
Even though China relaxed the one-child policy and they allowed for 3 children.
That's right.
It still hasn't
people it hasn't regrounded. No, because again that was under Marxist wolfism, and Marxist wolfism wanted to, how one say, undermine the child building capacity of especially the poorer members of society. It's just what happens in a wolf pack. If you've got a beta female gets pregnant, you will kill off her children or chase her away or something. It's what wolves do. It's what alphas do within a wolf pack system. So you try and limit the amount of children the betas can have in general.
Well, I think that the one-child policy was because of overpopulation in the 60s.
Well, that's the excuse they gave.
and they couldn't feed. Yeah.
Well, that's the excuse they give, you know. I mean, in the West, we have abortion, you know, and who got aborted? It was the wealthy children or the people poor? It's the poor. So you set up as the alphas, you set up a system which provides abortion for the poor, and you kill off the ability of the poorer families to have people to have family. And that's what wolfism is. That's what it fundamentally is about: weakening the family structure and the ability of the betas. That's what wolfism is all about. So that's what happens in the oligarchy, and that's why we have such a poor rate of childbearing and marriage in the West, because we are under the power of cultural Marxism, all the different cartels. So you can look at Russia. Russia has a split personality, and you kind of never know what's going to come out, which one is going to appear. They have this oligarchy wolfism, where you have some super rich oligarchs who are battling it out for power, and anyone who kind of like steps out of line, they will, you know, get decimated or killed off or something. And that pushes them. One of the reasons why they went into Ukraine is because East Ukraine has a lot of natural resources, which the oligarchs wanted. But then they've also got this Christian paganism, which is, you know, the Orthodox Church, which is very strong, and Mother Russia and the family system, and they need to support, you know, the family system. So one of the reasons we went into Ukraine is because the LGB whatever theology was being pumped into Ukraine by NGOs, and they didn't want the Russians there to have that. And they are also dealing with the legacy of Marxist wolfism, and one of the reasons they went to Ukraine is to protect all those Russians who have been, I don't want to say poorly treated a bit by the Ukrainians. And so you kind of, that's, you know, the reasons why, three of the main reasons why Russia went into Ukraine, but which one was the primary one, it's hard to see. And then you have America, where that was Christian paganism, but it got infiltrated by this postmodernist Marxist wolfism, which wants to take society to a Marxist wolfism situation. And they do this through encouraging the single parent species norm, which undermines the puffin norm, and you end up with you know, those who value the family system and those who don't. So. Then you have West Europe, which is now dominated pretty much by Marxist wolfist cartels, and Christian puffinism is weakening fast, and now it's being infiltrated by Muslim Lionism, and yeah, so this kind of like looks like this. And then what is the best hope for a peaceful future within Europe? Is it kind of, my thoughts are basically, if you can get rid of the different cartels and come back to some kind of a Christian puffinism of people, you know, building strong families, then that strong marital norm might lead to kind of like a peaceful coexistence between Christian and Muslim communities. But if we have this single parent species norm, that there will be no peace. There will actually, the Muslims still read their Quran. They know that this will lead to decay. They know Europe is theirs, and this will lead to conflict in the future, I believe. And then you have East Europe, which is trying to hold on to and strengthen the Christian Puffinism, but it's being undermined by Marxist Wolfism and its hypersexualized attack on their nation. So it's all very complicated, but you can look at the different parts of the world through this lens, and it gives a view of what's happening and what you need to do to stop problems occurring. So here we have 70 years of Marxism, with it three Marxist imbued legislative issues. We've had 70 years of that. We've had the abortion cartel, which has destroyed the honor of men and women, makes it harder to find honorable men and women, to find each other, and it exacerbates all kinds of human failings, and it's led to gangs and drugs and prison for males, and, single parenting, and all kinds of different negative outcomes. And then we have the formulated new divorce law cartel, and they've weakened the marital norms and caused massive amounts of lineage decline in many families. And you have the unprincipled, poorly formulated welfare benefit system, which doesn't enter into the proper relationship of give and take action. And that's a cartel in itself. And that has increased single parenting. If you get pregnant after school and you get pregnant, we'll give you a house and we'll pay for all kinds of things. And girls go, oh, I can do that. And it's led to unstable cohabitation and undermine career aspirations. So in England, we have large numbers of people just living off welfare benefits and not going forward in their career. So we have these things, and this has led to basically every single social statistic of social well-being shows negative, basically show consistently negative. There's nothing positive occurring. There's no growth, development in human well-being we see in any form in the West, you might say. There's more drugs, more alcohol, more depression, more every single statistic, and it comes out of that. And there's no sign of any improvement pretty much anywhere. This is alcohol-related deaths, which have risen, doubled almost in the last 25 years or so. And during the years of communism from 1920 to 1990, the 70 years, it grew. The economy grew about 1% a year, and the West was growing at an average of 4% or so a year. After 70, 80 years, that a massive difference in wealth of each people and the well-being, the ability to afford cars and houses and everything else. Massive difference. So, but Europe is now in this 1%. You can see the whole of the left, apart from Ireland, is now at 1% growth. This is Soviet era growth, and this has been the state of growth for the last few years, even though with the massive technological development of computers and the speeding up of all kinds of processes and everything, purchasing and you name it, growth has been staggering low because it's the energy of society has gone into just basically it's not focused on the family system anymore. It's focused on picking up the pieces of human damage, you might say.
Stephen, this is an EU map because it's
Yes.
not showing the UK.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay,
It was
just EU.
Yeah, this comes from the EU. The EU, I want to say community, whatever, the European Community Statistics.
Okay.
So this is Soviet era. Meanwhile, Singapore has had consistent growth, which didn't enter into the social welfare system mentality at all. Has very low divorce rates and has a lot of marriage strengthening systems and all kinds of things. It still maintains 5% a year, and it will, keep carrying on that way for many years to come, because it didn't enter into the Marxist sphere. And so we see this. I showed this last week. This is this. So basically, more and more on the we can see we're entering into the era of authoritarian wolfism, where the top get wealthier and the poor struggle to get into life and marry and have families and children. So we see this over the last 50 years. They started at the same point of 93% were marrying, and now only 60% of those from the lower end of the economic spectrum that can expect to marry and form families. So they just basically just become the foot soldiers, the work in manufacturing and make money for the wealthier, and they come home and they might get government support, and that goes into their rent money, which goes to the wealthier, and many of them find it incredibly hard to save and go forward with their lives, and hence depression and all that sort of thing. So we can see, you're heading to wolfism when the lower end struggles to enter into life. So that's what we've got from the main three forms of Marxist game plans, the famous three, where, which is the Marxist game plan. I pass this law which allows you to hurt other people, which allows you to undermine the well-being of other people. And in the last 10 years, we have these other 5 or 6 major Marxist marketing strategies. So you can ask, will these improve our society? Will this, if we hire people based upon their race or sexual expression rather than their competence, where will that take us in 30, 40 years? Will it make us a better nation or a less competent nation? And I think most of us agree that it's a disaster to have, less competent professors or less competent architects or less competent whatever. Just it's going to negatively impact us. And then you have IVS and surrogacy cells, which are growing rapidly, and then we have a growth of people who are buying and selling children who would never want to agree to being sold, and they are subjected to higher risk. So is that going to bring about improved outcomes? And we can say no, that doesn't look like a positive. And then we have the transitioning cartel, and if we sterilize and cause serious health problems to thousands of kids, and if we undermine the equality of the sexes and harm our stem cells, will that in 30, 40 years, what will that look like? Will it be a more positive future? And again, it will not be. We can pretty much say that. And then the climate change cartel, and if we have higher energy prices and unstable supplies with solar and wind, and industries are forced to go elsewhere because it's too expensive to have energy, and more people struggle on the poverty line paying their bills because of all the energy prices and energy taxes and everything else. Will that lead to a more fruitful future? And that's not going to work. And then you've got the illegal immigration cartel. Let's import millions of uneducated migrants who have no interest in democratic norms and more than likely live on welfare. There was an interesting report put out by the Dutch government yesterday. Very interesting report. It basically said the average immigrant from Muslim countries will cost about 300,000 euros in net costs over the course of over the course of their whatever you call it lives. You might say they're negative. Some other cultures bring positives, and those are typically from of course well-trained people from other nations or monogamous nations. And then you have Sweden, which is, as I said, they went through a lot of turmoil now recently with gangs and no-go areas and bombings and stabbings and all kinds of things. They have clamped down rapidly on the immigration, and lots of other nations are struggling with this issue. So will this lead to a more peaceful future for an age? We can't see that really happening. So none of these game plans, they all will cause decay. And so we can only expect to even more decay, that we only expect the future of decay. we have schools and universities which pump out postmodernist supporting students. So they say, yeah, let's have immigration and let's support the LGBT, and they're buying and selling of children. Let's support the trans, and let's support, the abortion, and let's support. And the media supports it, the left-wing media, and even conservatives, many don't see the harm. And we've got some area of freedom of speech left. But last week I mentioned this word, post-Christian nations are 80% Marxist. And I'm not sure if that's the right way to express it. But we are decaying. We are setting in motion even more laws which are decaying, going to decay us. And I don't know what is the right way to express that. Have any of you have any thoughts on that? Have any of you, how would be a better way to express that? We had some chance, if we're lucky, to escape some of these games, some of these cartels. But the media is not going to make it at all easy. They're just going to call us, unfair and cruel and nasty and things like this. But is this the best way we can explain it? We're 80% Marxist. Is there some other way?
Is this the end of your slide now?
No, I got a few more, just a few more.
We've got a few more, okay, because I don't want to prolong discussion if there's more slides.
Okay, I just wondered if it, because you mentioned this sense of
Stephen,
80%.
can I ask, I want to say, perhaps to formulate it as a question.
Yeah.
To say, for example, if countries are promoting this and this, then probably these countries are already infiltrated by Marxist ideas. And what the number 80% is of course, you have a reason to say this, but is there any data to prove that?
No, there's nothing there. It's just it's just a rough figure thrown out to say we are in substantial amount of decay, and we've got a substantial number of laws that are bringing about this decay.
Yeah,
and we still have some freedom to be able to reform.
Yeah, sure, but probably then the listener can himself make the conclusion, or then is like you say, a substantial amount, more than half or whatever. But I don't know. But the question is, countries making policies which are influenced by certain ideologies which lead to the results what you describe in your comments, no?
Yeah.
But of course it's difficult how to formulate it, I don't know. But this is what my immediate idea about that.
Yeah. I would
suggest you just say the postmodernists have dominated the public square, and there is no room allowed for alternative viewpoints.
Yeah, there is a bit of room. We do see,
given the right, there is a pushback. There is a pushback. Back.
Yeah. So some companies are getting rid of their DIE, EI departments, for example, but the government departments are not doing so. Yeah, and because they realize it's not helping their companies, and some nations are stopping transgender.
Some increasing it. No, the banks, for example.
Who?
The banks, for example, have to adhere to these DA laws, and so not everybody is getting rid of it. I have the impression in the UK, actually.
Yeah, it depends on the nation.
America maybe, but not in the UK.
Depends on the nation, yeah. I mean, a lot of nations realize when they advertise this, LGBTQ, whatever, especially the T, that when they advertise using that, they are instantly, their share price shoots down and people stop, 20-30% stop buying. So I did that with my Gillette, I went to Wilkinson, probably they know better,
But Gillette put this transgender shaving thing on it. A lot of people got upset with Budweiser, and it never recovered, So, but anyway, so the amalgamation of these postmodernist laws that we call basically all these cartels is globalism, and that's what the World Economic Forum is basically supporting. These leaders who meet every year, they have they try to encourage a common mindset. And basically, they talk about, basically how they talk about how will get power, and millions of people will struggle to thrive, and that's and the UN is more and more supporting these globalist aims, and because they're paid to, So. Increasing numbers of citizens in post-Christian democratic nations struggle to channel a three blessings lifestyle, struggle to live, a full life, and struggle to embody the lasting love species norm. But nations will revert back into some kind of authoritarian morphism or authoritarian Lionism. Because that's the only stable things that are possible, apart from Marxism never, Marxist Wolfism has never proved to be stable for very long, but others have lasted much longer. But so that's the future we look to if we cannot stimulate a discussion that brings about more responsible citizenship. And so there's nothing more fundamental than a species norm. You can't go any lower than what's our optimal species norm, and we only have a few to choose from because we can only survive as a cultures if we have some kind of marital norm, and so we have three possible ones, but some generate more energy and more equality than others. Now, puffin-brained individuals need to learn to fight back. We are too passive. We are too accepting. We don't realize the dangers. We're just concentrated on our own families, and we need to fight for the future of our own children, especially to encourage this optimal species norm. We have to stop focusing on minorities, which is what the postmodernists want us to do, and ask ourselves what the majority of citizens need to be doing for them to live a meaningful and successful life, and how to develop a culture that supports the lasting love species norm. And if we do that, then there's hope for our nation. But if we don't, then we're doomed to some kind of authoritarianism with a bit of pain, probably on the wrong way. So thank you. That's what we will end there. Your thoughts, gentlemen? Am I making reasonable sense? Although I don't have a lot of data, do you think it's a reasonable argument to make?
I must say, Stephen, I think from a practical point of view, the lecture would need to be at least split in two.
Yeah,
because it's for young people maybe a bit difficult to listen this amount of time, and but also to what if I think, then my view is you said this cultural Marxism or this influence of Marxism, but what in my opinion I would like to have more concrete examples how this is implied, or because it's not so clear for the public what are the strategies behind. Of course, you mentioned the marketing strategy, but in some sense, I would like to have some concrete examples where this marketing strategy is put in practice, basically, and also.
Last week we did. I think you managed to see the transgender slides, didn't you? The slide.
Yeah, somehow, yes, but still, this is if it is on all levels of then civil servants and whatever. But anyway, this is one point, and the other point
Right.
is, for example, the influence of pornography on and other yeah
Yes.
industries which basically devastating for our society
Yes.
and name it. Maybe you have some other examples also. I would say they are promoted by certain people for money, but behind, of course, is a agenda, in my view. And if you listen to reports, then they try to excuse it, basically. And the governments are, how to say, they are earning money through this because it's a huge business. They all pay tax, or at least some tax, at least. So I'm wondering if this is needed to a little bit more deeper to and show more, because I think violence in the family many times is the cause is that people are consuming this kind of hard porn or porn, you know. And
Yeah.
my last point is the influence. Of course, in public, it's a bit difficult to mention because like just not premarital sex is influencing, but also the choosing the right partner. I mean, you mentioned a few points. What is the right partner? But also I mean, we know it from our matching experience that also the family and ancestors are quite an important part. And yeah, all these things, of course, it depends to which audience you speak, but I think these few points came spontaneously in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Thoughtful. Yes. Good point. Yeah. Okay.
I would disagree about overdoing it on the things we see around us. It's very obvious to anyone that these. I mean, you've already highlighted the marketing strategy across these areas of DEI, gender, fluidity, climate change, racial, identity politics. The examples are all there to see. It's the solutions that I'm more interested in, and
Yes.
solutions you're proposing. Now, if you take, I mean, I can't imagine how many puffins it will take to drive out wolves and lions in real life. But I would imagine it'll be an uphill task for
For sure.
puffins to drive wolves and lions from their land, put it that way.
Yeah.
But that is actually a measure of the uphill task we've got, because as you
Yes.
say, it may not be you may not be able to quantify it as 80%, but it's damn close to it, if not more.
Yeah.
They have the tentacles of postmodernism is everywhere. It's seeped into every strand of society,
Yes.
every institution. There's a group think, a very
Yes.
strong group think, and a cowardice, a lack of backbone of people to stand up against it.
For sure.
Everyone is self-censoring themselves in what they say or do,
Yes.
and it's like walking on eggshells in
For sure.
the public square. You dare not say anything that could affect you losing your job the next day. So
Yes.
it is a really, really big obstacle and you may have seen on the forums of, that I expressed on the email exchange, my frustration with the movement, that we took our foot off the gas when the Berlin Wall came down.
Mm.
We just thought, okay, communism is finished now. 1989, that's it. We can all relax a bit more and focus on something else. Well, actually, that's the time when we should have put the Marxist theory to the sword properly.
Yes.
Now we see cultural Marxism has taken over, because economic Marxism didn't work in the last century. It was very clearly never going to work to bring prosperity to a country. So it is a difficult task. That's why I'm thinking, okay, what's the solution you're offering? And what you're offering is, because I come from an Irish Catholic family.
Yeah.
So in the 1960s and 1970s, it was norm to follow what you're suggesting. No premarital sex, marry the love of your life, never divorce, have 4, 5, 6 children, and you had a good prospect of getting a home in your mid-20s, and to have a proper home with a garden, to raise children. And that was the norm in Ireland in the 1960s, 1970s. And single parenthood was looked down on, it was not encouraged, and it was seen as a taboo. So now, in only a short space of time, Ireland has gone into the vanguard the opposite way, and is one of the most woke countries, alongside Trudeau's Canada and wherever, where they are in the vanguard of the woke ideology. And it breaks my heart to see how Ireland has done a total 180 degrees change. In many ways. So it really is a very big obstacle we're facing. But what you're suggesting, as I said, the three blessing formula, was something that we Irish took for granted 60 years ago. That was the norm. That was the norm behavior. So how do we get back to that norm? That's the question.
That is the question.
Yeah. That's the question, yeah?
Yes. That is the question, how we get back to that norm.
Yeah, it's slaying one cartel at a time, it's going after it.
For example, I'm not sure, if you go on my Facebook group and look, I posted there a thing for new discourses with James Lindsay.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with him? It's a 6-minute video where he sings, and where a Christian pastor asked him how we can combat that, no? And he said, I don't really know, because he's not a Christian. But he said, you have to do groundwork. You have to go outreach. In that 6-minute video, no? He said that there, because theologically he's very, very knowledgeable because he says everything comes from hermeneutics, through Hegel and so on. He goes deep into that. So, but what about us? What about our movement? How we can promote that? I think the stories you mentioned with the animal is actually quite good. I never heard it that way, and it's quite easy to understand. It's very
easy to understand.
Yeah, it's very complicated concepts put in, and if somebody has specific questions, you can elaborate quite a lot.
Yes.
It's a bit. But the question is, so it seems to me, at least to Father, when he was around, he was saying with the VOC, and he trained people, and he did a lot of work, and he was somehow quite successful. But it seems our movement is not interested in it, is it?
No. No, there's
Or
no
not
interest.
effective.
I mean, it's not true.
Or what
I
they
mean,
do,
well,
or
you
what
got
they do,
Heiner, like
not
Heiner
effective.
Hanshin and his wife Caroline in the UN have, you know, held quite a lot of conferences to try to talk about family and marriage, and you know, whereas the New York UPF is not particularly interested in it. Yeah, so some people can use their space to achieve something. But yeah, our movement in general doesn't have a picture first of what postmodernism is and what it's trying to do, and what a clear picture of like the three blessings framework and what the difference is between the two. So if we don't educate our own members, then we're really stuck in the first place. You know? But when you talk about taking it down, then you have to look at the example of what happened in Poland to take down, you know, communism in Poland. That took 10 years of creating an alternative society within the communist society. So you had the Solidarność, which was a central focus. You had its own printing presses, its own, you know, communication structures, its own media, which was kind of like circulated quietly underneath. There would be meetings, there would be all kinds of things, and teachers, you know, doing rebelling and quietly and teaching their students other things than what the curriculum, and basically you set up a different country within the country, you might say, a different culture, and eventually the old one comes down. So we see that's what's kind of happening in part. We see the beginning of the University of Texas and Jordan Peterson and various people starting off a university. We see the different communication, you know, networks developing, and people choosing not to go to certain universities and which are more woke, and we see the development of various networks which are attacking various issues, working together on X and things like this, strengthening each other and helping each other. So this is you know, this is all part of what it takes, but we're not, you know, we maybe one or two individuals may be part of it, but we don't. And as unificationists, we need more unificationists involved and getting, how one say, learning to explain the difference between the Christian worldview and the decaying Marxist worldview, and really putting it forward. And individuals can do that as well as the movement itself. Yeah, but
Well,
we all got to learn to talk.
I think the our opportunity has passed us now. As I said, Parsa 2.0 should have been created back in 35 years ago, 1989.
Yes.
Focusing on this new strand of Marxism, cultural Marxism, which actually existed way back to the Frankfurt School and was being spread from the 1960s in the universities.
Yes.
And you, by the way, you speak of Jordan Peterson in the chat. I put a link to where he's interviewing. It's a very, very interesting interview on YouTube. He's interviewing a fellow called Robbie Starbuck. He's heading a campaign to get corporations to abandon their DEI policies in America.
Okay.
And it's a very hopeful video to watch when you get a chance. It's in the chat.
Yes. Okay. I just opened it.
Yeah, I think the opportunity has passed us by. I have to say.
Well, I don't see that's necessarily true. You know, I think if we can if we can put together a reasonable package, because many other developing nations are, you know, coming up coming upon this. In the West, it's really hard. In Europe, West Europe, extremely hard. I mean, you get some people like Meloni, is it, the Italian, and she's fighting back on some levels, and she's but in other ways it's really complicated to try to break through, because, as you say, people are so caught up in these things. But in the developing nations, many of the developing nations, it's not the case. They are, and if UPF is a worldwide issue, and if we could provide very clear answers, this is how you build a healthy society, by focusing on the three blessings framework. And if you go down these paths, these will cause decay. So don't go down those ways. Don't redefine marriage. Don't get involved in the redefinition of biological sex. Don't get involved with DEI. Don't allow it to happen in your country where we're meant to be treated equally. Don't allow these things. Then, if we can clearly give those things, then those nations have hope, and we don't have to go back and pick up the pieces many years later.
So why aren't we doing that, Stephen? Why aren't we going there? I mean, you're talking about
Africa, that's the question.
South America.
I mean, I put out. I mean, no one's analysed like I have the Marxist game plan, the unificationist worldview in the way, and how it's being undermined by no one's done that in the way I'm doing that. People, as I said, the two other people, Thomas Ward and what's his name? Craig Kaufman. They both don't use the principle. They don't understand species norms. They just focus on postmodern and you don't. That's not good enough. It's not clear enough. It doesn't give a clear enough worldview. It's one thing to say, oh, these come from decaying Marxist worldview, but you've got to create a positive vision, and only the three blessings worldview can do that.
No,
I agree. I agree with you.
I fully agree, Stephen.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the African countries will embrace your what you're teaching. This content will open arms, because they want something to push back against.
Yes, they're sick and tired of being pushed around by the Western nations. Yeah.
The West is holding these countries to ransom.
Absolutely.
The West is saying to these African countries, we're not going to give you aid until you embrace woke.
Yes.
And that's really upsetting a lot of African traditional society.
Absolutely.
And South America as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is why they're the hands of the Chinese,
is training some own people within the UPF community, getting them understanding the issue, putting together a concise series of talks, clearer put and nicely put, and then being able to go out to use their local church or their local whatever, and use the connections we have to promote this. That's the task we have. Now, my problem is I'm not an author. I'm not a media person. I'm just a thinker that just thinks and then gets revelations. And I feel, oh, this is what's happening. And my problem is how to find those people who can, in UPF, who are willing to work together and create something, and willing to find leaders of UPF who are willing to say, yeah, let's do this. And we'll find.
Well, I'll start by saying UPF is a rubbish organization. Okay, I've been involved in UPF for years and years. I see nothing productive coming from it. It needs to be abolished. Full stop. Then we have to start. Stephen.
In part, it's meaningless because it doesn't have an understanding of the principle which will allow it to help other countries specifically.
So what's the point of it, Stephen? Why should the church?
Well, no, it's one thing to, but they built a network. They built a network of reasonably common-minded people, whatever, to some extent. And our job is to clarify what the goal, what our principle is actually saying, and then saying, being able to convey that to these people.
I think Terry is right. Let us say I go and post something like what you said about Islam. We get a pushback in the UPF, especially in the UK, because we have to show some people, yeah, we have nice meetings, and a lot of Muslims turning up. And if you say something against them, you've been in it's just a mess.
No, I haven't said anything against. I said they could build stable society. That's a real blessing. That's a real positive form of you can actually do this, even though it's not really democratic, but at least it's somehow stable to some extent, if possible. And we see this because Islamic nations have existed for centuries. And when they get their act together, sometimes they can generate quite a lot of energy, like they did and took over a lot of Europe. So.
Well, the Islamic countries, they have very high tradition of family responsibility.
Yes.
And you know, they are much more that way God-centered than the Western tradition.
For sure.
And the Africans as well, and the South Americans, South Asians. It's these global South that's crying out for your message.
Yes.
The reason why is because they can feel vindicated. They can feel that they have a mandate from heaven, that they're doing it, they're going the right way, that they're not embracing woke, and that woke comes from the devil. Marxism comes from the devil. The West has embraced both woke and Marxism. We're not going to do it. But if you arm them with this mandate from heaven, they will feel, they will
right. But the question is how to get there, because these are long talks.
So
these are kind of not very well presented.
If you go into IIIP, the academic background, and Terry knows a bit about it. You participate on one evening on the lecture of Yamasaki. They would very well understand what you're saying, but how they're doing it is far too complex. They go in all this kind of philosophical discussion, what our people do with unification thought in Korea and in Japan is also quite big. So we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of things, but it's not concise enough. It's not clear, what you presented in a way with a metaphor, and that will not be effective what they're doing,
There's no point having webinars held in Europe and America. The UPF needs to go down to Africa, needs to go down to Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Uganda, and meet with the senior people there and say and give them this kind of character education, all this form of teaching, saying, look, we have something tangible, a system to offer you. Please listen, and this will give you confidence to withstand the West, because the West is the enemy now.
Yeah.
There's no other way. We need to get away from Europe and America and focus
for sure
with people on the ground in Africa.
Yeah, I mean, we have East Europe, which would be receptive, many of the East Europeans.
Europe as well.
Yeah, but the question is, we have to be first clear about the power of the principle and to provide answers.
Yeah.
And then we could on that basis we can critically analyze other nations, other thought systems, which is what I've tried to do. And then we can be confident. But then we have to put out a media format that is, easy to follow and enjoyable to watch and learn from. And if you can get leaders for a weekend, they would leave, oh, this is what's happening in the world. This is what's going on, why the West is decaying. This is exactly what's happening, and we're being, persecuted for holding on to tradition. But this is the way we can go forward by focusing on this three blessings, like worldview. Then, if you can give that, then there's hope for these nations, and if we can support them with other programs, like as you say, character education or marriage education or whatever, then we have meaning and purpose in our movement. And I believe that's what Father really wanted in the first place to go for. But we've lost our way very much, and we haven't invested in what we need to invest. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, we went with the wrong agenda.
Yeah.
We went with the agenda to say, we want you to become followers of Father Moon.
Yeah, we went
that was the wrong agenda. Father didn't want that.
Yeah,
And
well, they didn't want
you
that.
know, we wanted them to embrace true parents, the concept of true
Yeah,
parents. In fact,
yeah.
that can come later. You
Of course, it
first
comes later.
you bring them to God. You bring them to this concept of this tree blessing framework, and let them then, you know, in the fullness of time, they will understand the spiritual status of Father and Mother Moon. But
Yeah,
we went there with this hidden agenda to
always.
convert them, and that was
Yeah,
wrong.
wrong, total.
Yeah.
And what about our brothers and sisters who have quite a good connection with Africa? You know, like Franz Batenburg is very much involved with Zambia, and he most probably would understand what we're talking about. Or we have Ron Jervin, who is very much involved in Zimbabwe, and then we have few other brothers who are involved in Nigeria, including Franklin Fortune and some other people. They do programs of character education. You know, but most probably just, you know, love God and love your neighbor and love yourself and love others.
Yeah, but people need a vision. People need a bigger vision. Leaders need a bigger vision.
Yeah.
And they need to understand the difference between, you know, what crumbles them and what doesn't. They need to be clear about these things, yeah. And then they can set a direction forward, and they can circle, because there are plenty of positive character educations out there, and there are some very good marriage education programs, and there are parenting programs, and there are, you know, good education programs available from Christian sources and things like that. There are all these things already available, and we don't have to reinvent a lot of them fundamentally. But the point is, we need to be clear about what the principle is saying in terms of how do you create a healthy society using it, and why it's the only way. And we need to be confident. And that our problem is a lack of knowledge, how incredible what we've got, and that's our problem. Yeah. So the rest of it is possible once we catch that confidence.
Yeah. The sad reality is that we're all in our 60s and 70s, and we're not going to be taking up our suitcases and traveling down to Nairobi in Kenya or wherever. Yeah, we need the younger generation,
for sure,
you know, in their 20s and 30s to be going down there and imparting this teaching.
Yeah, when they have families and everything else, so you would have to pay for them. You would have to say,
exactly. Now we're back to the point of financial resources.
Yeah.
And you know, the UPF, this is why I'm so angry with the UPF. They've wasted so much money on other projects, including paying millions of pounds to speakers who never attended Father's funeral. You know, there's a lot of that stuff going on, which I've never been happy about. Paying people to speak at your events. I mean, they paid 2.5 million to Trump.
Yeah.
For 3 10-minute video appearances. That 2.5 million could have funded a lot of families.
Could have funded a lot of conferences. Yeah.
Go down there and full time spread the word. You know, this is why, you know, the priorities are all wrong.
Yeah. A lot of things are all wrong. Yeah. Anyway, thank you all. I think we're at its 2 hours limit.
I've had my rant. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But I hope you've enjoyed these 5 meetings.
I spoke about this today in the Baptist church where I went.
Okay. Good.
And because there were only 10 people there, and I said, what do you think if we have to go back to educate families? And the big problem is, I think, in our society, we don't really educate families properly. If you create healthy children, the society will function. They all agreed. Just simple words. I said, go back to Adam and Eve, for example. Adam and Eve didn't mature. They didn't create proper families. We had already Cain and Abel killing each other. And logically, they had not the right dominion over the creation, what God had them to do. That is the result today. And they know that, but they cannot put it in.
So because they've spoken to them, Herbert, about the puffins. They need to become puffins.
Puffins, that's right. They need to become puffins.
You need to teach them about the puffins.
Well, but the main thing is you teach your children. if I went back and I would, if I had this, because I only realized this a few years ago, this puffin thing.
Yeah.
If I went back to reteach my children, I would give them a chance to associate themselves with one of the true lasting love species. Are you a beaver? Are you a, are you a puffin? Are you an albatross? And I would get albatross things and, etc. And they would have one say they would embody they would embody the knowledge that they're a true love species from a very young age. And that would protect them from all the other things. That would say, they already would be imbued with, like a puffin, I'm part of a true love species. This is my course. This is my direct destiny. I should show affection, like I watch mummy and daddy show affection. I should show affection to my partner, etc. I should have core values. I don't go killing other puffins and steal and things like that. And I would imbue them with the knowledge that they're a true love species and their job is to do the same. And I think my children would have been far more, I mean, they're wonderful kids, but they would have been far more clear about their destiny. And I hope Johan, with your five grandchildren, Johan, with your 5 grandchildren, I hope you can bless them all as young children with the knowledge that they're a true love species and give them, one of the species norms and encourage it.
And Stephen, next time we meet up, we all dress in puffins, yeah?
You don't have to be a puffin. You can be an albatross. You can
no, I like puffin, the big nose.
I like puffin. I'm a puffin.
Yeah, you could make a song about the puffin.
In disguise.
Yeah, I'll make a song about it too, yeah?
Yeah.